All right, everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that I think secretly affects a lot of us, even if we don't always talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Imposter syndrome.
Interesting.
You know that feeling? Like you're not as competent as everyone thinks you are, and you're just waiting to be exposed as a fraud.
Ah, I see. Yeah.
And you sent in a really interesting note about it, all about overcoming imposter syndrome by owning your achievements.
Uh-huh.
So we're going to dive deep into that today.
Sounds good.
We're going to try to understand why we feel this way, even when we have evidence to prove ourselves wrong.
Right.
And hopefully, by the end of this, we'll have some practical strategies to, well, kick imposter syndrome to the curb.
Awesome.
I think what's really cool about this note is that it encourages us to use lighthearted examples.
Oh, okay.
Which I think is a really great way to approach this topic.
Yeah, I agree.
Because let's face it, imposter syndrome can be kind of a heavy subject.
It can be, yeah.
But by using lighthearted examples, we can make it more relatable and less intimidating.
Right.
So before we get into the specifics, I'm curious, when you hear the term imposter syndrome, what immediately comes to mind? What's your gut reaction?
You know, it's funny because when you hear the term imposter syndrome, it almost sounds like this rare thing, this condition that only affects a select few people.
Like it's this exclusive club that nobody wants to be a part of.
Exactly. But the reality is, it's shockingly common.
It is.
It affects people from all walks of life.
Yeah.
Students, entrepreneurs, artists, even seasoned professionals at the top of their game.
It's crazy, right?
It is.
You'd think the more you achieve, the more confident you would become.
You would think, right.
But it doesn't always work that way.
It really doesn't.
And that's what's so interesting about this note, this idea of owning your achievements, because it highlights the fact that imposter syndrome is often an internal battle.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter how much external validation you have, you can still feel like a fraud.
Yeah, it's like this disconnect between what you've accomplished and how you perceive yourself.
It's that disconnect that we need to address.
Exactly.
So let's say, for example, you absolutely nail a presentation at work.
Okay.
You know, everyone's impressed, you get tons of praise, but inside, you're thinking, oh, they only liked it because I got lucky with the topic, or they were just being nice. Does that sound familiar at all?
Oh, that's a classic example.
It is, isn't it?
It is.
Because instead of acknowledging your hard work, your preparation, your skills, you're attributing your success to external factors.
Exactly.
And it's that minimizing of your own contribution that fuels the imposter syndrome.
It's like you're giving all the credit away.
You are. You're giving it all away.
Instead of owning it.
Exactly.
And that's where the problem lies.
So I'm curious, are there certain things that make someone more prone to feeling like an imposter?
That's a great question.
Is it personality? Upbringing?
Yeah.
Certain experiences?
Well, research suggests a few key factors.
Okay.
One of the biggest ones is perfectionism.
Ah, interesting.
Because when you set unrealistically high standards for yourself, it becomes almost impossible to feel like you've truly achieved anything.
We're always falling short.
Always.
Your own expectations.
Exactly. And then there's social conditioning.
Oh, that's a big one.
It is, especially in today's world.
Especially with social media.
Oh, absolutely.
It's all highlight reels.
It's all highlight reels.
It's hard not to compare yourself.
It's constant comparison.
And feel like you're not measuring up.
And that can really fuel those feelings of inadequacy.
So we've got this internal struggle, often fueled by external pressures. What can we actually do about it? How do we overcome this?
Well, the note emphasizes owning your achievements, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a great starting point.
Right.
Because it's about shifting your perspective. Instead of focusing on what you haven't done or where you think you're falling short, you start acknowledging and celebrating your accomplishments.
So how do we actually make that shift? How do we start owning our achievements?
One really powerful technique is thought challenging.
Thought challenging.
Yeah, it's like this.
Okay.
When that inner critic pops up
Yeah.
and starts telling you, you just got lucky or anyone could have done that, you stop and you actually analyze those thoughts.
You question them.
You question them.
Instead of just accepting them as truth.
Exactly. You dig deeper. Ask yourself, what specific actions did I take that contributed to this success?
Oh, I like that. It's like playing detective with your own thoughts.
It is. You're gathering evidence.
Instead of just letting those negative thoughts run wild.
Exactly.
And I think it's also really important to remember to celebrate your wins, both big and small.
Oh, absolutely.
We often rush past our accomplishments, don't we?
We do.
On to the next goal.
On to the next thing.
Without taking the time to acknowledge what we've achieved.
And that's a mistake. Because celebrating your wins, no matter how small, it helps build that internal sense of worth.
It reinforces that you are capable.
It does.
And that you deserve to be proud of yourself.
Exactly.
So keep a wins journal. Share your accomplishments with a trusted friend. Make it real for yourself.
Make it tangible.
Yeah.
Because that recognition can really make a difference.
This makes me think about how important it is to have supportive people around you.
Oh, it's crucial.
People who can remind you of your strengths when you're stuck in that negative self-talk loop.
100%.
Because sometimes we need that outside perspective.
We do.
To help us see things more clearly.
Right.
Building a supportive network, whether it's mentors, peers, friends, it can be a game changer.
It can be.
Because sharing those feelings of imposter syndrome can normalize them.
Absolutely.
And it can provide a fresh perspective.
Because often what we perceive as weaknesses are simply areas for growth.
That's a great point.
They're opportunities to learn and improve.
It's about shifting from a perfection mindset to a growth mindset.
Exactly. Embracing the journey, seeing challenges as learning opportunities, that's key.
Because nobody's perfect. Right.
No one is.
And striving for this unattainable ideal of perfection only fuels the feeling of being an imposter.
It sets you up for failure.
It does.
Because you're constantly chasing something that doesn't exist.
So we've covered a lot today. It seems like imposter syndrome is much more common than we might think.
It is.
And it has roots in both internal and external factors.
Right.
But the good news is,
yeah,
it's not something we have to just accept.
Absolutely not.
We can challenge those negative thoughts.
We can.
Celebrate our wins.
We can.
And build a support system that lifts us up.
And most importantly, we can learn to own our achievements.
Exactly.
Because they are ours to own.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to consider this.
Okay.
What's one concrete step you can take today to acknowledge an accomplishment, big or small, and quiet that inner critic?
It can be anything, right?
It can be anything.
Like writing down a list of your accomplishments.
Yeah, or sharing a win with a friend.
Or simply taking a moment to appreciate how far you've come.
Exactly. Whatever it is, write it down, make a plan, and start owning your success.
Start today.
Start today.
You deserve it.
You do.
And that's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
We all deserve to feel confident in our abilities.
And to recognize our worth.
So go out there and own it.
Own it.